Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll get started in just a little bit. I hope everyone's getting settled in. We'll wait for everyone to get started in just a second. All right, well, as we have a few more folks joining us, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our fourth session of the Tennessee Family Series. We are so excited that your student has decided to become a vol, and we cannot wait to welcome you and your student to our Tennessee family. My name is Johnny Logue. I work with the Office of First Year Experience, and tonight we will be talking about student success with some of our fantastic UT staff members from the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration, Student Disability Services, as well as the Academic Success Center. Family members, you are welcome to start entering your questions using the Q&A button below. We have a slide posted on how to find that Q&A feature. We just ask that you keep your questions related to tonight's topic, student success, and that you don't resubmit your questions. We promise we are working hard behind the scenes to get your questions answered, whether that is live by our panelists or by responding directly to you in the chat. If we do answer your questions by chat, you can find those responses using the All Questions tab or the My Questions tab as they are answered. And at the end of tonight's session, we will also share all of the contact information for the offices represented, so you can reach out directly if you still have any questions. Before we begin asking our panelists some questions, I'd like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, share what office they're representing, and what they do here on campus. So Stephanie, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this evening. My name is Stephanie Kitt. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration. I'm also the mom of twins who will be starting at UT in the fall. So I have been in the audience for some of these Tennessee Family Series sessions. So glad for you to be here tonight. And I'm giving a short blurb about the Career Center, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just tell us a little bit about what your office covers.
The Center for Career Development is really here to help your students with all things career. So that could be choosing and changing majors, figuring out what they want to do with their degree, finding part-time jobs and internships, and then eventually helping students reach their goals, whether that's their first full-time position or continuing their education in graduate school.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ed Zirkle. I work for the Office of Student Disability Services. I am currently an access coordinator, and what our office does is help students with disabilities in getting different types of accommodations, whether it's academic, housing, we even do nutritional accommodations. So basically, that's what we're here to do, and hopefully help your student if they have any needs for accommodations.
And I am Megan King. I'm an assistant director of outreach in the Academic Success Center. And so, like our name says, we are all about academic success. And so, we have 17 professional academic coaches who your students will be paired with. Coaches help students find balance among their academics and their social schedules. They help them with time management, they help them develop study strategies and just strategies to be successful in the classroom. But we also take it outside the classroom, really helping students develop as scholars and kind of getting them ready for what the next steps are. We also have our Vol Study Center, which is associated with the Academic Success Center, and that's where your students can come and get one-on-one study sessions with their peer learning assistants. You might think of it as tutoring. We call it study sessions and their peer learning assistants. And we tutor in hundreds of classes every semester. And so between academic coaching and one-on-one tutoring and group tutoring, that's really what we do, and just try to make sure that your student is ready to be successful at UT.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your introductions. To get us started tonight, I have a question for all three of you, and Stephanie will have you kick us off. What is one piece of advice you would give a family member who's preparing to send their student to UT?
I'm going to speak about career and just say, don't worry if your student doesn't know exactly what they want to do with their major, or if they're starting to express some doubts about, gosh, I'm not sure, I want to stick with this, maybe I want to change, because that is actually really healthy, and exploring majors and careers is a great spot to be in. And once they get to campus and get settled, they are going to be exposed to so many resources and services that can help them do that. So just help them normalize questioning, and exploring is fine, and there's time to figure it all out.
At Student Disability Services, we're really centered on those students who have disabilities, which is not always the case, because sometimes we have students who may have disabilities but don't know they have disabilities. But really, we do cater to quite a number of students who does have disabilities and different types of disabilities. So we don't go looking for them. Now, a student who has a disability has to self-identify. We usually have them log in through our student disability website and then fill out a registration form. And if they have documentation of their disability, we'll take a look at that. A lot of the documentation that we look at are like IEPs and 504s from high school. And so does that always translate to the accommodations the same? Some of it is, and some of it isn't. So there is a difference when it comes to accommodations, but that's our focus, to basically help students and really, get ingrained at the ADA level, the American Disability Act, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So we basically get them prepared for education at the higher level and being able to use their accommodations. Now, we can't always guarantee success, but we do guarantee equitable access. So that's our biggest thing when we're looking for that kind of information.
And my piece of advice would be do some research, sit down with your student at the computer and look at what classes they're taking, go online, look to see what resources are available, ask your student like what they're most excited about, what they're nervous about, maybe help ease their fears by showing them, oh, did you know you can get one-on-one tutoring with the Academic Success Center? Here's their website. Or even ask them what they want to get involved in. Maybe visit the Center for Student Engagement's website and just look at all the different things that your student can get involved in. And I think it's just important to be as excited as they are and to ask questions and to really show them that even though you're not on this journey with them per se, you are still there and you're a resource, and just get them comfortable talking to you about their experiences. And then you get comfortable just exploring everything that UT has to offer with your student, but also on your own.
Awesome. Well, thanks for starting us off with some advice. There was definitely some awesome pieces in there, and I know we'll dig into some of that here in a little bit. So Stephanie, my first question is to you, kind of relates to your advice, but what specific resources does the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration offer for students who might not know what their career goals are yet? Who might not know what to do with their major, who might be thinking they might need to change? How can CCDAE support them?
Sure. So we have a whole team that we call Academic and Career Exploration. So they are our ACE team, and we have ACE coaches that your students can schedule appointments with and really talk one-on-one about what are their interests, their skills and strengths, their values and personality traits, and how that could impact their choice of major or career and the satisfaction they will find. And if the student isn't sure what their interests are, we have assessments to help them uncover that. And everything is free in the center. So the students can take the strong interest inventory and meet with a coach to follow up. Something that they could start looking at this summer is a resource called What Can I Do with This Major? And if you go to career.utk.edu, you'll find What Can I Do with This Major on our front page. And we have probably 100 different majors, and click into them and see the areas people go into with that degree, the types of employers that typically hire students with these majors, and what students can do to really make themselves more marketable. We also teach an Exploring Majors and Careers class. So if a student needs a little more structure to commit to working on career development, they can take this 1 credit, very low stress type of course and get guidance from one of our ACE coaches through that class session. And just beyond that, they can plug into a variety of programs and panels and workshops to learn from professionals doing different jobs. So that's a snippet of how we can help.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. I know there is no shortage of awesome resources for students to support them during their 4 years, but right, that end goal of finding them a career after those 4 years. So thank you. Ed, my next question is for you. You kind of talked about this in your intro or hinted at it, but could you just cover a little bit more what specific types of accommodations are offered through student disability services, whether that's an academic accommodation, maybe dietary, you mentioned that in your intro, or even temporary accommodations for mobility or things like that?
Absolutely. So our biggest primary are usually the academic side, academic accommodations, and that really varies with the type of disabilities a student has. So when we have that, what we call a welcome meeting with students, we're really trying to find the information out of what kind of accommodations the student might need or might want. And then we will see if that actually, equates to the accommodations we can allow here at the higher education level. So some of those accommodations are like testing accommodation for a student might need extended testing time, maybe a room with low distraction to test in. We also have assistive technologies and stuff like that to help in the testing part as well. Sometimes in the classroom, it may be something as the ability to audio record class lectures and discussions, preferential seating. Again, we have recording devices. We have a great app that's called Glean that we use a lot for students who want to record and also kind of have a visual aspect of it with the recordings. And then sometimes we do have some other accommodations like housing accommodations, if they need a specific mobility type room or something, or a shower or something like that. We work with housing to try to hopefully get a student as close as or what matches whatever they're requesting in their accommodations for that. So and again, there's quite a variety of different types of accommodations, but it's just really going to be based upon whatever the disability the student has, and basically maybe what they've used before in the past. We'll discuss that, but it's really that interactive process where we're trying to really find out what exactly the student need, and if we can provide that type of accommodations. Plus, we kind of also, with that welcome meeting, we really try to educate the student since they're transitioning. Most are transitioning from the IDEA, which covered K through 12. So a lot of times, some of the students that we meet with, they may have an IEP in high school, but they probably never met with the team that put that IEP. Usually it's their parents or guardians who are usually creating that IEP. But a lot of times we do use that as important information to see what accommodation would translate into the higher education aspects of accommodations.
Awesome. Thank you. I know typically I think we think of, the educational accommodations, the 504 plans, the IEP. So thank you for pointing out, right? There's housing restrictions and accommodations. There's dietary restrictions and accommodations, even those temporary ones, right? If you break an ankle or tear an ACL, we can provide accommodations, buses for things like that. So thank you for covering some of that.
Just one more thing too. If you don't have documentation, that doesn't mean we're not going to provide you with accommodation. Usually we'll cover you provisionally for at least a semester. So it gives time. If your child doesn't have their documentation, that's okay. Go ahead and set up a meeting with us and we'll discuss it. And then, you can get that documentation to us later on. But we want to ensure immediately that the student does have some type of accommodations if needed.
Awesome. Thank you. Megan, my next question is for you. I know you said we don't use the word tutoring, but for the sake of clarity, I'm going to say it. What types of tutoring services are offered on campus, and are they free? Do students have to pay an additional fee to use those services?
Yeah, of course. So with our Vol Study Center, our tutoring is 100% free. All tutoring on campus to students is free. So in addition to the Vol Study Center, where we have hundreds of classes that we offer one-on-one tutoring, we also have something that's called supplemental instruction. And this is a little bit different. It's more of like a group tutoring session where your peer leader is actually going to sit in the class with you. They're going to work with your instructor, and they're going to provide weekly study sessions that is really going to go along with what the instructor is teaching, which is such a great resource. It's all peer-led. They're going to break things down in layman's terms and discuss it in something that your student will understand. Outside of the Academic Success Center, there's a plethora of other tutoring services. You have the Math Place that focuses on math. You've got the Writing Center. You have the Chem Tutorial Center, the Physics Tutorial Center. So there's a lot of resources on campus in terms of tutoring that is free for students. So yeah, that is just, those are multiple places that you can go. But one thing, there are some questions in the Q&A that I wanted to answer because I couldn't figure out how to answer it. Sorry, Johnny. One of the questions was asking about how students get connected with the Academic Success Center. And one thing I wanted to mention is with our academic coaches are part of your students' Vol Success team, and they are assigned an academic coach when they get here based on their academic college. Students can get connected to a coach just by coming to our office. They can make appointments on the Vol Connect app. Oftentimes they get connected via referrals, perhaps from their advisor, from their professor. We also have this amazing system called Academic Alerts. So if your student isn't going to class, if they're showing up late, if they aren't doing assignments, if they didn't do so well on their first exam, professors can put in an academic alert, goes right to our academic coaches, and their coaches reach out like that to get students and talk to them. We'll call them, we'll text them, we'll have them come in. So those were just some of the questions I wanted to make sure that I answered for you all.
Well, you said something, so I'm going to give you a follow-up question before we go back to Stephanie. You mentioned Vol Success teams, and maybe some of our family members have started hearing this phrase. Maybe they came to Vol 103 in June. Maybe their students have been doing Vol 101 and they're starting to learn about it. But let's take a second and talk a little bit deeper about it. What is a Vol Success team? Who are the members of that team? How do students get connected? You mentioned, they can just show up, but how do they find out who those members are? And how do those members support a student? So I've asked you 4 questions in one. Feel free to tell me to repeat, but let's just talk about Vol Success teams.
Yeah, Vol Success teams, they're sort of like your personal team of people who are assigned to you based on your major. So it's going to include your academic advisor, who's different from our academic coaches. The academic advisor is that person who's going to think about getting your student from A to Z. So they're going to think about the major, the courses, making sure that your student is on track to graduate. They're meeting all their requirements. They're just basically doing everything they need to do in the classroom or outside the classroom and in the classroom to kind of get to graduation. The second person is the academic coach. So the academic coach is thinking less about what courses a student is taking and more how to be successful in those courses. Again, both are assigned based on that academic college. You also have somebody from the why is my brain? One Stop. Thank you. Yeah, you also have someone from One Stop, which is going to be that financial guide. So if your student has questions about their bill. If they have questions about scholarships, if they have questions about anything financial, they can go to that one-stop person. They also can talk to students about not necessarily paying for college, but just paying for life, and just really how to budget, things like that. So they're really just there to support your student from the time they get to UT to the time they graduate. And also, I mean, there are a lot of other folks who are maybe unofficial parts of your Vol Success team, which would include Stephanie's amazing staff, all of those career coaches and ACE coaches. So everyone, who supports your student, they can find them on they're actually the Vol Connect app. So when a student logs into Vol Connect, they'll actually see all of their success team members listed, and they'll be able to make appointments with them via Vol Connect. They'll be able to chat with them via Vol Connect. So it's a really great way for them to kind of see who's on their team and communicate with them, ask questions when they need to, make appointments when they need to.
Also, just go ahead and plug family members. If the Vol Connect app sounds new to you, that is a new app this year, but it is very important that your student downloads it. Have them take a minute tonight, download it, log in with their net ID and password. Like Megan said, that's where they'll be able to find their Vol Success team members. They'll be able to set up appointments, find any events that are happening on campus. It will be very important for them these next 4 years. So take a moment and download it now. All right, Stephanie, officially headed back to you. Let's talk about jobs on campus for first-year students. Is that something you recommend? Would you encourage first-year students to seek out maybe part-time jobs on campus? And if so, how might they find those opportunities?
Sure. So I think working part-time is definitely dependent upon the student and what they feel like they can manage in terms of their course load and academic success. So we always want students to, of course, be focusing first and foremost on their academics, but there is some research that shows students who work like 15 hours or less a week actually can do better with GPAs. So if you know that your student is one who thrives and does well when they keep a busy schedule, a part-time job may be a good route to go. So I want to distinguish between two options. There is something called work study, which is part of the federal financial aid package. So certain students qualify for work study, and if they're not sure if they do, the One Stop can tell them. And many of the offices on campus, like our office in the Career Center, we hire work study students, and these students help various UT departments with all kinds of work. So we have students who work at our front reception area, greeting students and staff and making appointments and working on special projects and whatnot. So work study is a great option to go if your student qualifies. If they do not have federal work study, but they still want to work a part-time job, there's lots of other opportunities that they can work on campus. So for example, our recreational center, T-Rex and Rec Sports, they are one of the largest employers of students on campus. The library, the Aramark dining services. And a great way to connect with these jobs is through a part-time job fair that happens 1 week after classes start. So it's the Tuesday after the first week of class. And we will have very many on and off-campus employers available for your students to connect with to find jobs. And then we also have something called Handshake, where students can find part-time job opportunities. So lots of chances to work if they want to make some extra spending money.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. Ed, my next question is for you. So if a new student is needing some accommodations, when do you recommend that they set up that initial meeting with your office to ensure that their accommodations are in place by the time they arrive on campus? And then can you also kind of just go over a brief, maybe like what they can expect through the process of getting those accommodations met?
Absolutely. So first of all, if a student needs to get accommodations, we recommend they do it immediately. Usually the first thing is to set themselves up for an appointment by calling our office and setting themselves for what we call a welcome meeting to meet with an access coordinator. like I said, you don't have to have your documentations immediately. We can talk about that later on in the discussion, but just setting up that meeting and go ahead and meeting with an access coordinator so we can get this process started. So usually the welcome meeting consists of just a bunch of questions just to ask what type of what they're experiencing with their disabilities, what barriers they have with their academics. So that way it kind of gives us an idea of what we can offer when it comes to accommodations. So a lot of students who have utilized accommodations before, they pretty much know what works for them. So, they'll let us know exactly what works for them. And then, and it is kind of a team experience because not only is it just involving the student, but sometimes it also involves the faculty members themselves, the instructors. So what we're doing in that welcome meeting is actually creating what we call a course access letter, which is basically an accommodation letter that gets sent out to the instructors. And that way the student can get their accommodations they need in that particular course. So, and like I said, accommodations are different. You may have a student who has like ADHD. I may have 10 students with the same disability, but they may not have the same types of accommodations when it comes to it. So basically, it's on a case by case and individualized, when it comes to their accommodations. But I always encourage anybody who needs accommodations to reach out to us immediately. That way we can get the process started and hopefully get their stuff set in place. So when the semester starts, they have everything they'll need for that. And then, and if they need other accommodations, they can always come back to our office and request other accommodations if they need to.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying. So families, you don't need to wait until the first day of classes. You don't need to wait until you've moved in or you're on campus. You can already start that process now. So thank you for clarifying that. Megan, my next question is for you. Is there a difference between maybe study sessions offered by a student's academic college versus a study session offered through the Academic Success Center?
I would say potentially, because we do work close with the colleges, but in terms of what they offer, we don't know. The Vol Study Center, we train our peer learning assistants that they go through a very extensive training. Our peer learning assistants who do supplemental instruction do work closely with the professors with those courses. So we just can't always guarantee, we don't know what that would look like. I mean, that's a really simple answer. There are other tutoring services on campus. Like I said, they can go to the Math Place versus Vol Study Center. They can go to the Chem Tutorial Center, versus Vol Study Center. So all of these are excellent resources. And so I wouldn't promote one over the other. I think go to all of them, go to the Vol Study Center and go to the Chem Tutorial Center and go to the Math Place. All these resources are going to be beneficial to your student. The more people helping, the better. If they find a tutor that they prefer, with the chemistry department over Vol Study Center, that's great. As long as they're reaching out, asking for help and utilizing the resources, that's all we want.
Perfect. Perfectly said. Yeah, there is, again, no shortage of resources on this campus. So many people are wanting to help your students make sure they're succeeding in the classroom, out of the classroom. So yeah, all the study sessions is our advice. All right, Stephanie, we're headed back to you. So what resources might be available for students who might need help writing a resume or prepping for an interview?
Yes. So we first off have self-service content that students can access on the website just to get started, a resume guide, videos they can watch on writing resumes. They also can access peer career advisors. So just like there's peers helping with study sessions, we have peers that can help your student write their resume or improve their resume. And they typically have drop-in hours every day of the week when students can just stop by and get some immediate help with resumes or interviewing tips. And then they also are able to schedule appointments with career coaches if they really want to sit down for some in-depth help. For interviewing, all of those same things apply. There's ways to access guides on our website. We have something called Big Interview where students can practice just with an AI program and get comfortable answering questions, but they can also do practice interviews with peer career advisors and coaches to get that immediate feedback. So we want them to have the best materials possible and really present themselves as well as they can. And some of your first years might find that they're going to need a resume and interview for student leadership positions, maybe even sooner than they need it for a job. So if they want to become an orientation leader or the freshman council with our student government association, they'll probably have to turn in a resume and maybe even do an interview.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying and pointing out that, right, it's not just for seniors looking for their full-time jobs, right? Our first year students, sophomores, juniors, anyone can use these services. Anyone might need a resume, interview prep at any time. So thanks for clarifying that. Ed, let's talk about some short-term accommodations. So how might a student who sustained an injury or a hospitalization go about receiving some of those short-term accommodations just while they're healing?
Again, that really depends on what the injury is. Of course, we do provide temporary accommodations. Sometimes we'll have students who maybe broke an arm or broke a hand. We might have to be able to, like testing accommodations, maybe help them with a scribe, hopefully to write for them or type for them if need be. But usually when it comes to temporary accommodations, we don't really consider that technically a disability, even though it could be disability for that time being. But we do try to work with the students and try to help them with provisional accommodations to kind of help them through that period. So, we do still require documentation for that. And really what we're looking for is how long is the injury going to be? Is the recovery period, are they going to have a physical therapy or something? So if this is happening during the semester, we definitely can, hopefully help that individual with some types of accommodations. Mobility is one of them. So sometimes we have a student who may have broken a leg. We do have a transportation system on campus called T-Access, where it basically basically a shuttle bus that will actually pick a student up if they just have to call them, and they will pick them up where they need to be on campus and then drop them off, and then they will even come back and pick them up again. So it really differs on the type of injury that individual has with that, but we do see that quite a bit. So and we're here to hopefully help them and still continue their academics with hopefully not having that ability not to be able to have some kind of services in place.
Perfect. Thank you. We hope your students are staying safe and healthy on campus, but we know sometimes a game of pickup basketball can go a little too hard. So Student Disability Services is here to help if you need it. Megan, we'll head back to you. Let's talk about the Vol Study Center. What types of resources are offered through the Vol Study Center, and why might a student want to study in the Vol Study Center rather than maybe like the library or their residence hall?
Yeah, Vol Study Center is located in Strong Hall, and it's really an amazing space. So not only do you have tables set out where you can just spread out and study, they also have free snacks and free coffee for students, as well as free printing. So it's a really great space to just kind of come in, grab a snack, grab a coffee, and hang out. We also do have peer learning assistants available in there for drop-in. So let's say you go in there and are studying math and have a really pressing question, you might be able to find a tutor right there and be able to talk to them immediately. It's just also really quiet. It's a really, sometimes the library can get a little loud. There are quiet floors, of course, but it can just get loud. And so if they're looking for a quiet space, that's definitely a location that they can go to. And there's multiple locations. So you have a Vol Study Center in Strong Hall, but you also have another location that's actually within the library. And a lot of our services, our tutoring services, happen all over campus. So when a student wants to have those one-on-one study sessions, they can go to the Vol Study Center, or they can go to other locations on campus. So there's locations in Xena, there's locations in residence halls. We have Zoom availability. So the Vol Study Center is just a really good, quiet space. We've got the resources, we've got the people. And we just have cool people that you can chat with while you're there. And sometimes our academic coaches actually hang out in there as well and are available for a quick coaching session if that's something that you feel like you need while you're studying.
Awesome. Thanks for telling us a little bit more about the Voss Study Center. Stephanie, my next question is for you. So we know some maybe majors or colleges have required internships and co-ops as, part of those graduation requirements. So does the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration help students secure those internships and co-ops, or is that handled directly through the college?
Okay, yes, so many of our majors and colleges do require some kind of experience. Sometimes they call it field placement, or in nursing, it's clinicals, or it could be internships. When the experience is required, there often is support within that major or college to find the experience. So our College of Social Work has a very strong field placement process, and they have students who are working in the community at different organizations and agencies. And so the college has strong relationships and will help the students find those spots. So I think that the students will find a lot of support from their faculty and internship coordinators when it's required. They can always come to the Center for Career Development for additional help. Maybe they want to seek a different type of internship or organization that their faculty don't have a relationship with, and we could try to help source them. And then, of course, any student who on their own chooses to find an internship, we would have resources. So that could look like employers coming on campus to job fairs to talk about opportunities with students, our handshake system, posting internships there. There's going to be a exciting new program called the Ball Edge, launching in the spring, where we're really going to be encouraging students to participate in this career readiness program. And part of the program is having a deep engagement, which could be like an internship, undergraduate research, service learning, or study abroad.
Awesome. Thank you. Ed, if a student meets with you all, it's determined that extended time is a reasonable accommodation for their disability. Are professors required to provide that accommodation?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You kind of went out on my.
Yes, sorry. If a student met with you all and it's determined that they are eligible for extended test time, is a
Mhm.
professor required to meet that accommodation?
Yes. So what really dictates everything that we do here at Student Disability Service is the American with Disability Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So, and what sometimes is kind of misunderstood is, even though our office helps the student provide them with the accommodations or assign the accommodations, it's really the instructors who are providing that accommodation. So if that student has that particular extended time for accommodations, then yes, the instructor would need to have would need to allow that to happen for the students. So technically, a professor cannot, or an instructor cannot, deny an accommodation without first contacting our office for that. So a lot of times we do, part of our secondary duties as coordinators here is to make sure that the institution is in compliance with that. So yes, there are times when sometimes we do have to talk to instructors and explain to them because of the ADA rules and stuff, they do have to provide the accommodations. But there are times when we can, if there's another accommodation that might work for the student, then we'll bring that up in our discussions. So it's basically collaborating, not just with the student, but with the instructors, as well as our other resources we have on campus. So that's something that's also, I didn't really talk about too much, but we depend a lot of the resources. For example, the Academic Success Center, career development. We talk to our students about those. So we try to build that bridge of trust and hopefully be able to provide those types of informations to not only the students, the families, and, the institution as well as our employees. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Megan, as we've mentioned, there's just so much opportunities on campus to get help in the classroom. So if a student is having trouble in a class, who should they go to first? Their professor, their TA, straight to an academic coach, just hop in the Vol Study Center, right? Where's step one?
Yeah, I would always say step one is your instructor. They are the experts. They are the ones who are in the classroom with your student. So I would definitely suggest reaching out to the professor first, kind of depending on what struggle is happening, and go to office hours. Office hours for professors, they want to see students, and they make that time specifically to have students come in, ask questions, and get information. I would say your TA, your teaching assistant, is going to be also a really great resource if you have one in the class. Those are graduate students, who are in the classroom with you as well. They're a great resource. And it sort of depends on what's next. If you feel like you're not getting what you need from the instructor, or the TA isn't really being helpful, and you feel like there's maybe just a little bit more going on, then maybe a coach is the right person to see. I think it's important for our student to figure out what is the problem. Is it that I'm not getting the information that they're saying in class? Am I not studying right for exams? Is my note taking just not working? So I think a student has to have a conversation and some self-reflection, figure out where is the disconnect? Maybe why am I struggling? And a coach can really help a student answer that question. They're going to ask really intuitive, really deep questions to get a student really thinking about where that disconnect is happening. And they're going to help the student kind of come up with the answer and help the student come up with a solution. So I think starting with the professor, the TA, maybe their peers as well. Your peers are a great resource. So encourage them to make friends with the people around them, because they might understand what's going on and can help you. So that's a great resource. And then the Vol Study Center, again, is another great resource. Even just, let's say they're not even struggling. They're like, I just want some confidence going into this exam. Go see a peer learning assistant, go see a tutor, just to have that confidence, like, oh, I know this, I've got this, I definitely know what this concept means or that concept means. So it's really kind of dependent on what the student identifies as the most pressing issue or problem that they want to get addressed.
Awesome. Thank you. Stephanie, we've talked a lot about Handshake, or a little about Handshake. It's come up in some of your answers. So let's talk about how students set up and access their Handshake accounts. Is that something they can do now, or do we need to wait until the first day of classes?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Actually, no need to worry about Handshake right now, because students aren't going to get loaded in until right before classes start. So they'll have time in the first few weeks of school. But once they are able to log in, they will start creating a profile. And so it's almost like a digital resume. They can add in their student organizations. If they have any part-time work, they can select their job preferences, where they want to work one day, and just start playing around with finding maybe on-campus jobs or other part-time jobs and internships. If they are in one of our many first-year studies classes, they should also get an assignment related to Handshake. And we do a lot of programming and tabling at the beginning of the year. We call them Handshake Hangouts, where students can drop by and get guidance if they're just needing a little extra help on getting that set.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying. I know there's lots of things to do between now and August, so maybe not downloading Handshake and getting set up is a weight off of some people's shoulders for right now. Ed, if a student submits documentation, they have their accommodations, is that a process that a student might need to go through every year, or once it's done once, it's in place for the next 4 years?
No, usually if they have their documentation and everything we have all the informational requirements from that documentation, it's a one-time thing usually, and they'll have accommodations until they either leave UT or they graduate.
Perfect. Thank you. Megan, let's go back and talk a little bit more about Vol Success Team. So we mentioned those 3 core members of their Vol Success Team, the academic coach, academic advisor, and one-stop counselor. Are students required to meet with a member of their team, maybe all 3 members of their team? What does that process of like getting connected with them look like? Do they reach out to the student?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a little bit different for each. So with the academic advisor, they definitely 100% have to meet with that individual. They have to meet with them at least once a semester for a few different reasons. One is so that they can register for their courses. The academic advisor is that person who's going to make sure that they're meeting all of their milestones that are required for that particular major. And everyone's majors are different. So if your student's an engineer, their requirements are completely different from somebody who's in nursing. Typically with the academic advisor, they will reach out to the students and let them know, hey, I'm available for appointments, and they'll give them a link that they can make their appointments with. They can also reach out to them via email if they want to. The advisors are very busy. They have a huge caseload of students. So it's more typical for the advisor to reach out to the student when it's time for them to meet. That doesn't mean that the student can also reach out to make an appointment. They definitely can, especially if they're thinking maybe about switching a major or just having questions about maybe doing a minor, things like that. So their advisor, yes, 100% they are required. The academic coach is a little bit different. So as Stephanie mentioned, as part of our FYS 101 courses, one of the assignments is actually for them to meet with an academic coach. So they will meet with an academic coach at least one point during their freshman year. And that's typically like a group coaching session where they'll just get introduced to a coach, do a small assignment, just kind of learn about the benefits of coaching, set a goal, kind of learn all that stuff. It isn't, it's required for the course, but it's not necessarily required outside of that. Typically when students come to academic coaching, it's because they want to, they're just looking for an additional resource, or perhaps if a student does begin to struggle academically, if they are placed on academic probation, then they will be required to see an academic coach. Coaches will reach out to students who are on academic probation. That typically happens after a semester where they do earn below a 2.0 GPA. So coaches will reach out and they'll say, hey, let's come in and meet, because they want to make sure students get back on track academically. That GPA is so important for different scholarships, major requirements, things like that. So kind of depends. And then for the financial aid counselor, again, that's depending on what the student needs. They're still there to answer questions. They don't necessarily have to meet with them one-on-one if they don't necessarily need to, but that person is there and is available for appointments if they do have questions regarding aid, scholarships, things of that nature.
Well, one last clarifying question for you. Are the members of that Vol Success team with a student all 4 years, or is it just that first year on campus?
That's an awesome question. So it depends as well. So they'll see their advisor there all 4 years, unless that advisor does happen to move, for example. But typically they should have their advisor from year 1 to year 4. The academic coach is a little bit different. They're assigned that coach for year 1. That doesn't mean they can't see the coach through the rest of their academic journey. They certainly can. They just may not see that person listed anymore in their Vol Connect app. However, we encourage students, if you want to see a coach every single year while you're in college, do it. They just may not be listed anymore. I think that's one thing. Students are like, I don't have a coach anymore. No, you totally do. They're just not necessarily listed as part of your on your Vol Connect app, but they can certainly be a very important member of your Vol Success team from year 1 to year 4.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your insight and your advice tonight. As we start to wrap up, I will ask our panelists just to share one last time, what is the best way to contact your office if they have any questions following this webinar?
For the Center for Career Development, that email that's listed there is just a great way to ask a question, and our front admin will direct it to the person on our team who can best answer it. So I'd say email.
For Student Disability Services, we do have the email, of course, sds@utk.edu. That's one of the best ways to get in touch with anybody in our center. If you're trying to set up like an appointment to speak with an access coordinator, then I would suggest calling that way so they can set you up for any kind of appointments for that.
Yeah, and again, the same thing for the Academic Success Center. Definitely go to our website, email us. That will let us know that you need to chat. We can direct you to a specific academic coach to get that question answered. You can also call our office if you want to talk to someone directly. We can funnel that question to one of our coaches. I would say also just follow us on social media so that you can kind of see what's going on. You can ask, what is it? DMs? I don't know. I'm not really with it, but you can do private messages there, and we'll answer those questions for you as well if that's an area that you'd like as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, panelists, for joining us this evening and sharing your resources with us. Family members, thank you for joining us for session 4 of the Tennessee Family Series. Before we conclude for the night, I do have just a few quick reminders. We would love if you would take a moment to fill out our session survey. You can follow the link in the chat box below, or you can find it in your post-session email. If you haven't already, please don't forget to complete the guest version of One-on-One, Vol 101, our online introduction to UT. The link is just vol101.utk.edu, and you can create a free guest account to complete the program along with your student. And just a quick reminder that your student is required to finish Vol 101 before the first day of classes on August 19th. And finally, we would love to stay connected with you and your family and encourage you to join the Tennessee Family Association. This will sign you up for the bi-weekly newsletter so you can stay up to date on important information. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We hope we see you at our 6th session as we talk with parking, dining, housing, and one stop on July 25th. Have a great night.